Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we'll be covering an introduction to enhanced e-commerce, a feature of Google Analytics. My name is Leslie Strickland, and I'm the Manager of Business Intelligence at Accesso, based out of our Lake Mary office. I'd like to start by going over a few housekeeping items so you know what to expect and how to participate in today's session. You may have already noticed that your voices have been muted. They will remain muted throughout the session. However, you will be able to type questions to our moderator, Katie, throughout the webinar. Then at the end of the session, there will be a Q&A taken from your typed questions. That said, at accesso, we believe technology has the power to redefine the guest experience. Everything we do starts with thinking about the guest experience first, which allows us to help simplify operations, improve guest satisfaction, and drive growth for our clients. Our product suite has grown a lot over the years, but we see our solutions falling into 4 categories: queuing products, ticketing and point of sale products, distribution, and guest experience. Together, our solutions help us connect visitors and venues using innovative technologies to improve guest experience and drive revenue for our partners. From theme parks to performing arts centers, zoos, and festivals, our products and services support some of the top attractions in the world in at least 9 different markets. All of these markets have unique needs, but there is one thing that they all have in common: a demand for innovative solutions in an ever-changing digital marketplace. Our focus on research and development is a major point of differentiation for all of our products. We invest heavily in this area because our industry demands it, because our clients benefit from it, and because it makes a positive difference in the guest experience. So if you were part of the last webinar related to Google Analytics, we talked about the conversion optimization lifecycle, and so I want to start there. This really ties into what we were just talking about related to the guest experience. You too, as a client, have the power and control to change how your guest experiences your web store. And that comes in the form of this conversion optimization lifecycle. So let's talk about the steps that I've defined here. First, you have design and implement. And I want to make a note here that design and implementation is not just the colors of your store. It's not just the verbiage that you're using. It can mean everything in marketing. So if you think about the main tenets of marketing, you have your product, you have your price. All of those things are part of design and implementation as well. And those things you as a client specifically have control over. The next is defining success. So without knowing what your benchmark is, what the goal is, you have a hard time providing context for how your performance is. So in a market where you have a lot of seasonality, things that change very significantly year over year, it can be hard to define success. So one of the things that we like to do is use year over year benchmarks. If we're doing something on a very short-term measurement scale, maybe comparing week over week, essentially you want to have some kind of context to what your success is. Now, maybe for that, that can even be your sales targets, your daily ticket sales, or your season pass sales. The next is measurement. So how do you measure the success of the things that you've implemented? If you are doing web performance, maybe you're looking at conversion rate. If you are looking at your product changes and how that's affected your overall product sales year over year, that could just be your total product sales. And then finally, you want to take action. So with it, this entire process means nothing unless you take that information and filter it back into your next decision. So if the changes in your product prices or your product set has increased or improved performance, or maybe it's decreased or declined in your performance, then you want to take that information and use it to make a difference in the decision you're making in your next round of implementation. These kinds of decisions can also be made kind of on a micro scale. It doesn't have to be every quarter or every year, but every little thing that you do can impact your success. So if you know how you expect it to impact your success, you can measure it and then take action to improve in the future. And that's why we want to talk a little bit about enhanced e-commerce today. Enhanced e-commerce increases visibility into the customer journey with relation to your products and their placement, and essentially the steps that your guests are taking in order to make a purchase. What enhanced e-commerce is it a feature within Google Analytics, an enhanced feature within Google Analytics that gives you a lot more visibility into what's happening within your store, how your guests are experiencing your store, and that ultimately gives you information that can feed back into your implementation. So first I want to start off by talking about the difference between enhanced e-commerce and standard e-commerce. So standard e-commerce is the standard setting within Google Analytics if you set that up to track transactions within an e-commerce store. And as you can see here, there's a list of 5 reports that come with standard e-commerce. I will have you note too that if you look at things like transactions, product performance, even sales performance, all of those reports are reproducible within your accesso reporting solution. So in essence, Google Analytics isn't providing you much additional information that you can use to make good decisions. Enhanced e-commerce is different. Enhanced e-commerce is providing a lot more information at different points within the store, not just information about the ultimate transaction. So if you can see here, there's a whole host of reports, and specifically I've called out these built-in sales funnels that we'll talk about. And all of these reports provide information about different points and places within the store. So today's webinar, we're going to talk about the benefits of enhanced e-commerce, and we'll actually do some demos of some of the more important reports within enhanced e-commerce, so we can discuss business case, how you might use those and find them useful in your business. So let's take a moment to talk about the benefits of enhanced e-commerce. Aside from having a whole 5 or 6 additional reports within that suite, there are a few main benefits. The first is understand which products drove sales. So as you are moving through an e-commerce store, you can be selling a product from all different places, and this is going to help you understand where within the store your products are actually coming from that are driving sales. Understanding your individual product take rates. So one thing that you don't get with a report in your accesso reporting system is how many times a product was viewed within your accesso store. So in this case, what you're actually able to see is how many times a product was viewed, how many times it was purchased. So you get essentially a conversion rate at the product level. And that gives you a really good idea of what the interest level is in your different products. And some of you may have very complex product sets, so this information could be very useful. The next is access to those standard sales funnels. So I called that out on the previous slide, and this is really important in my mind. You standardize a sales funnel so you can see all of the key steps from the beginning of the shopping process through the end, so that as you're making changes to your product set, you're making changes to your promotion, your digital marketing, you can see how that standard sales funnel is being affected on an ongoing basis. The next is gaining segmentation on funnels. So this is part of the reason why I think these new funnels are so great. Within standard e-commerce, you can manually set up funnels based on page views. And that information is helpful, but what you don't get from that information is the ability to segment or filter. So with enhanced e-commerce sales funnel reports, you can filter to things like your mobile traffic or your digital marketing campaign or your email marketing campaign. This allows you to really get more granular about performance and see which portions or segments of your traffic are actually driving sales. And then finally, you gain insights with internal promotion tracking. So within an accesso store, you have the ability to promote products in different places within the store. And some of those places are not necessarily products, but an invite to go view a product. And this gives you some insight into who views, clicks on, and ultimately purchases products from that as well. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to looking at some actual reports. What we're going to start with is our shopping and checkout behavior reports. So what you're able to do with these reports, these are your sales funnels. You visualize your entire sales flow with these standardized funnels. And like I said, you can benchmark and use this to really be able to see how changes within your platform are changing the flow through your sales funnel. The next is identifying customers who are lost and how to fix it. So if you're familiar with web marketing or conversion marketing, you're looking at things like your abandonment rate. How many people are falling out of that sales funnel and where? And then ultimately trying to determine information that's going to help you change that. How do you retain those guests through the next step? Like I talked about on the previous slide, you have the ability to segment. So if you are spending on your digital marketing or you have a specific promotion, you can use segmentation to filter down to those campaigns and look at those specifically within your sales funnels to look at the effectiveness. The next is monitoring. So how do changes in your products or changes in how you launch guests to your store ultimately affect their movement within the store? And this is really where it becomes the responsibility of you or your analyst to have an understanding of what your standard conversion rates look like within your funnel, and then be able to identify when those things are changing when you're making changes within your design and implementation. And then finally, another thing you're able to do is profile guests who do complete your funnel. So if you have guests, you have 20% of your guests who are making it all the way to a transaction, you can segment down to those guests and then determine what areas are they coming from, what specific media are they coming from, and essentially profile what looks like a quality lead. So moving on, let's go ahead and actually take a look at one of these reports. So what I want to start with here is how to get to enhanced e-commerce. So when you log into Google Analytics, you get taken to this nice dashboard on your home. You can see that's orange there. Then the left-hand navigation, conversions at the bottom here. So we'll go ahead and click conversion. We'll open e-commerce, and then there you'll be able to see your shopping behavior and checkout behavior funnels. So we'll go ahead and click shopping behavior. And I'm just going to pick a longer time frame here. So this is a demo store with some dummy data for us to work with. So we'll pick a longer time frame so we have some data here. So the first thing I want to talk about on this sales funnel here on shopping behavior analysis is all of the different information. You can see there's data points all over the place. So first is the standard steps themselves. You can see all sessions with product views, sessions with a cart ad, sessions with a checkout initiation, and then ultimately sessions with transactions. So this is labeling that visual for you so you can see which step the guest is making it to. And the next thing you have here is the actual number of sessions that made it to each of these steps. If you look down here, this gray button here with a rate is your conversion rate between each of these steps. So for example, you may have a big promotion that are pushing a lot of people to your site. What you want to see is that you maintain the number of guests or percentage of guests who are making it to your site, but also going on to the next step to view a product. Or perhaps you're directing them directly to a product. You want to see that you maintain your conversion rate from viewing a product to adding that product to a cart. So I like looking at these segmented down versus your overall conversion rate, because different actions, different things that you implement may affect different parts or pieces of that funnel. The next thing that you have at the bottom here is the number of sessions that didn't make it to the next step. So if you're interested in abandonment rate instead of conversion rate from step to step, that's what you have here in this little red percentage. That's your abandonment rate at each step. You also have that information in a little chart down here that you can segment to different information if you'd like, but I like looking at the visual. I find the visual to be a lot more appealing and a lot more kind of naturally indicative of the information that I need. You may also notice that you have all users here. So when we were talking about segmentation, when you open up Google Analytics, any report is going to default to your all users here. We won't spend any time talking about creating custom segments, but you can create any kind of custom segment that you want using this add segment. So you can filter down to that digital media I was talking about. You can filter down to that specific promotion so that you can see, compared to your benchmark here of all users, how is that traffic performing. So next, let's move on to checkout behavior. The checkout behavior report is a more granular report that's based on the steps from checkout to sessions with transactions. So this report here is standard by Google Analytics. These steps, these actions are standard. The checkout behavior report actually gives you the ability to get granular based on your specific implementation. So the checkout, billing information, payment information, order review, and sessions with transactions, those are steps that are specific to an accesso Passport store. Again, Again, here I like to spend time looking at the conversion rate from step to step. You generally want to have much higher conversion rates in this part of the funnel than you would in the earlier parts of your funnel. And I would also be keen to watch this specific report anytime you make changes to something that happens in your checkout. So for example, if you intend to add a new fee, or your taxes are changing or something like that, you want to have an eye on this conversion rate between your order review and your sessions with transactions. How is that impacting your ultimate conversion right at that last step there? And you want to check on those things on an ongoing basis. Anytime you make any change there, really start watching it day to day to day, so that you can catch it and make adjustments as necessary. A couple of things on this report. It's very similar to the previous report, but you may notice that when you hover over this, you can click to create a segment. So what that'll do is automatically generate a segment that you can filter this entire report by guests who made it to your payment info screen, for example. Also, if you'll notice, there's a little box here that's higher than your previous step. And what this means, if you ever have a little white line in another box up top, it means sessions that started at that step. So you can actually see it says there, sessions that entered at order review. So this is a demo store. We'd probably have to look into why that could possibly happen here. But if you have any guests that somehow have links or things back to their store and they can kind of start a session in the middle of the steps, you'll see them join the funnel there. So that said, I think these are exceptionally important reports. They're really great for benchmarking your overall performance, your step-by-step performance. You'll be able to know when you're changing products, when you're changing fees, when you're changing information that you gather in your checkout. These are the kinds of reports that are going to give you a really good indication on if this is improving your overall performance or if it's perhaps negatively impacting your overall performance. Okay, so in this presentation, if you get back to this presentation, there's nice screenshots of these reports as well. Moving on to the next report that I think is great, product performance report. So the product performance report is in standard e-commerce, but there's a couple of pieces of information in this report that you don't get. So the first is you're able to analyze your product take rates. So essentially from a guest viewing a product to a guest adding to the cart or a guest purchasing that product, you get rates at which guests do that. So this to me is really great to identify and set benchmarks for the level of interest that you have in your product set. And you may have 5 products, you may have 50 products, you may have 500 products. This information is really great for you to see how many times specific products are being viewed, so which products are getting the most attention essentially. And then next, really understanding those take rates. Are guests interested in even adding this product to the cart, or are they adding it to the cart and then not purchasing that product? And those different things can be indicative of maybe your add to cart means that the product's just not interesting. It could mean that the description on the product's not good enough. Maybe a high add to cart rate but a low purchase rate could be indicative of a pricing problem. So you can use that information, especially once you've set benchmarks, say for your daily tickets or your season passes. As you change those products, you can see how your take rates are changing and make some assumptions about what you need to do to kind of continue to see a performance increase. In my opinion, you use this information to simplify your product set. So there's a lot of information in all of these stores. We know that online users are very quick to move through things. And so you can use this information to really understand which products are the most effective for you and potentially even narrow your product offerings based on that information. And then finally, I spoke to this a little bit, but really, again, this is one of those products one of those reports you use to monitor. So anytime you're doing new product offerings, so say you're adding a new type of daily ticket or a new type of season pass, perhaps you are adding a new product or price point to an existing product. You have this report, a benchmark for how this product performed last month, last year, and then this can give you context to how those changes impact that. So moving back on over to the reports here. After your checkout behavior report, you have product performance reports. We'll go ahead and click on that. So here you can see, if I go ahead and scroll down, you can see your list of products and the product revenue driven by those products, and that should be the retail amount of that product. Now this information, again, sales performance, these columns here, you can get from your accesso reporting solution. And that's great. You really should be using that accesso reporting solution as your source of truth for your revenue information. That's going to be much more accurate than Google Analytics. However, what you can't get in the reporting solution is this shopping behavior metric section here. So that's your cart to detail rate and buy to detail rate. So if you're not familiar with any of the metrics, you can always hover over these little question mark icons, and those icons will provide you information about what these metrics mean. So in this case, cart to detail rate is the number of products adds to cart, divided by the views of product details. So how many times was the product viewed, and then at what rate did guests add that product to the cart? So overall, you have about a 15% cart to detail rate and a 1% buy to detail rate. So again, if you have a very static product set, so you are selling event tickets and you have the same event every year, you really should have a good benchmark for what your cart to detail and buy to detail rate is. You may have some different features as a part of that ticket, you may have some different price points as a part of that ticket, and those will potentially impact what your rates are here. How you guide guests to those products may also impact that. So think about if you launch the store and you let the guest find this product versus if you have a promotion where you launch the store directly to that product, right? All of those things can impact these rates, but they're really great benchmarks for understanding the interest in the product. And then when you do change how you launch the store or where you launch the store to, or you do change something in your product set from last year, you can see how that's being taken. Another thing that you can get out of this report is kind of a different granularity. So in this case, we have a product name, but you may want to look at a higher level. So we're going to skip over product SKU here and go to product category. This is our primary dimension, which means this piece of the report will change. So now what you have here is the ability to see a grouping of products. So if you have, like I said, event tickets or daily tickets or parking passes, and they're all grouped at the package class level, which is a terminology at accesso Passport, that's the information that you get here. So this, again, may be good information for you to understand or benchmark that grouping of products, your season pass versus your daily ticket versus your parking. Another piece of information, if we go back to product here, another piece of information that you can get is in your secondary dimension. So you may have a general admission ticket, but that general admission ticket can be sold for a junior, a senior, a standard adult. So if we go into a secondary dimension and we search for product variant, you can hover over that. We're going to go ahead and select it, and now you can see that breakdown here. Product variant in the Passport solution represents your customer type, or sometimes called rate type. So you can see the breakdown of that general admission ticket. And if you don't want that, you can always just exit it out. All right. So again, as with all of these reports, getting this information going, starting to set benchmarks for yourself, getting comfortable with this information, having context is very important for being able to use this information. Okay. The next report on my list. So as you'll notice, if you go back to the enhanced e-commerce reports, I'm not going through every report, but I am going through the ones that I think are the most beneficial. The next on my list is product list performance. So one thing that, again, you cannot get from a regular reporting suite is the understanding as the context for where products were viewed within the store. So you may be able to sell the same general admission ticket under 3 different tabs, through this pop-up here, through this cross-sell here. Where in that store was that general admission ticket purchased? Your product list performance report is where you get that information. So first is you're able to see your product exposure. How many times is the product even viewed? The next is being able to look at the groupings of products and understanding your top performing groupings. And that's in terms of overall views of your products, so your general admission versus your annual pass products, maybe viewed more or less. The next is you're able to monitor your exposure and take rates. So knowing how many times a product was viewed and then ultimately clicked on, you can essentially see how these groupings of products are performing. And then finally, because you're able to see that performance, you're able to see generally what your click-through rate is for those groupings of products and then optimize to make it better. So again, we'll switch back over to the actual report itself. So we're on our product performance report here. And if we scroll down to, that's product list performance. And what I will do here is I'm actually going to pull up a store to give us some context here. So what we see is a product list name or a grouping of products. What you're able to see is the number of times it was viewed, clicked, your click-through rate, and then again, what products were added to cart, checked out, and purchased. So really, this is your whole sales funnel before a grouping of products. Now let's visualize that grouping of products. So within an accesso store, we have a nice little demo store here for you to take a look at. You can see that products are grouped by tabs. So we have a general admission tab, we have a season pass tab. So these are your groupings of products. And in the passport context, these are done via keyword, if you've heard that term. Your keyword is how you group products. So this is your list of products. Clicking on a product is a product list click, so that's your click-through rate right there. And then you can see your product view, and then if you were to go further, your product add to cart, etc. So again, now going back to this report, you can see the product list name here, and these are all of our keywords that are grouping products together. So in this case, our calendar is viewed the most, our quick sell is viewed the next most, but you can actually see even though general admission is viewed less, it's actually driving more revenue. It has much more in terms of unique purchases, even though the click-through rate is lower. So if I was looking at this report, I'd say, well, my general admission tickets are actually driving more sales for me, but my click-through rate on my general admission tickets is quite low. So how do I improve that? What can I do to make my guest want to click through my product list there? I could simplify my product set. I could change the naming of my products, something like that. So again, this is all about context and context within your situation, the products that you care to group, the products that you care to see click through on. If you have a seasonal business, you may find that some product groups do better in certain parts of the year and some product groups do better in different parts of the year. So again, having the context for these groupings of products, you'll probably always have a general admission grouping. How often is it viewed? How often is it clicked through? And is that against your standard pretty good? Or have you changed things within your product set or the way you launch your store and you're seeing fall off or drop off for people who are interested in general admission tickets? There's some other information that you can get within this report. So we'll go ahead and click through. I'm going to click into my general admission list here. And now I can get some detail about which products were viewed within that product list. So again, if I go here and go back to my general admission list, I can see these are the 6 products that I provided. And I can see those are the 6 products that are in my report here. So within the product list, you can actually see which ones are performing the best. You can actually also look at the product list position. So obviously your products fall into different positions within that list. So we have 6 products. Starting here, you have 0, and then they count up. Right to left and then bottom right to left. So what we find generally is that mostly this top left product is going to perform the best. However, if you're interested in kind of seeing the change in product performance by list, in this case, we actually have, it looks like there's a little bug, so none of the information is being assigned to a product list position. But usually what you'll see is this top left 0 position is clicked the most and generally has the most purchases. Now that could be because clients tend to put the product that's most interesting or most often purchased in that top left. So you can use positioning to try to push performance of products that you're more interested in. Perhaps you have a product slightly higher price point than your general admission ticket. If you just pop it over in that left top spot, maybe you get a little bit more activity and therefore a little bit more return on it. So again, have some context to what your product lists look like, how they're performing, and really use this to help you make decisions about what information, what places you'd like to place your products, what products you want to put in which lists, or at least use this information to get kind of an assessment after you've made changes as to how that information has impacted your performance. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at the internal promotion reports. So this is a place within the accesso store that you're able to provide additional offerings. And this report gives you the understanding of the exposure to those offerings. How many views or impressions, if you're familiar with digital media, do you get on those offerings? The next is, what is your take rate? So what is your click-through rate on those offerings? And then finally, and maybe most importantly, you spend a lot of time to determine which products you want to promote there. You can actually see what revenue you're driving through those. So in your left-hand navigation here, you're on product list performance. You'll open the marketing tab, and it's the first one, internal promotion there. So here it's similar to something that you may see on a digital marketing campaign. You essentially see how many views, how many clicks, your click-through rate, and then your transactions for these individual promotions. And what you have here is just the name of the promotion, and it's essentially sort of a product that you can see. So I want to show you within the accesso store what that looks like so you have a little bit of context. So as you go through a purchase, we'll go ahead and add a product here to the cart. We'll go to checkout, and you can see on my way to checkout, I have these 4 other items of interest. And this is in the accesso passport solution called a cross-sell. The ability for you to provide your guest one last opportunity to add another item to their cart that may be a benefit, that may go along with what they are already purchasing. So we have cross-sells here that are full-page cross-sells. And if you proceed to the cart, there's also cross-sells at the cart level as well. And you can click through these cross-sells and it takes you to your product. So what this list does is provides you the list of all the cross-sells that you have provided, how many times they're viewed, clicked on, and ultimately purchased. So which of your cross-sells are most effective? You may find that your parking pass is the most effective cross-sell, and if that's the case, maybe you want to provide a parking pass that's your premium parking pass. Maybe use that one instead of your standard to see if you can get additional increase in revenue on that parking pass. Essentially what this does is kind of gives you an idea of which promotions are really working the best so that you can understand what to organize for those promotions in the future. All right. So we've talked a little bit about terms in Google Analytics and their corresponding terms within the Passport solution, but I do want to take a moment to talk about these specifically so that you have these references in case you need them. So the first is product list impression. We talked about the list, that grouping of products, and that's really what it is a grouping of products within a tab. The name of that product list is going to be the keyword that groups those products together. Your product detail and click, if you see that metric within Google Analytics, that's the view of a product detail page where that quantity selection occurs. So you're able to add or remove the number of parking passes and add them to your cart. So the product click is the click into that detail view, and the detail view is the view. Product add to and remove from cart. So obviously this is the action of adding and removing from the cart, but it's specifically when that action is complete. So within the Passport store, when you add or remove something from the cart, the guest is always prompted to confirm that action. So this action is recorded when that confirmation occurs. Promo impression and click. So specifically within the Passport solution, that's their cross-sell impression or cross-sell click. In terms of product information, your product is product name or package name on our side we use sometimes. SKU is going to be your package ID. Product category is your package class, that grouping of products. And like we talked about before, your product variant is either customer type or rate type, depending on the terminology you're familiar with. And then the last thing I wanted to spend a bit of time on before we move on to Q&A is your accesso passport requirements. So if enhanced e-commerce is something that you're interested in, many sites and stores already have it set up. If you don't have it set up, it's actually a quite easy process. So there are 3 essential steps here. So the first is tag setup. This is on the accesso side. So we would validate that you're using universal analytics instead of classic Google Analytics. And then there's some tag manager configuration. So the tags that are fired within your store that send information back to Google Analytics have to be altered a bit to send the right information. The next is application changes. So this is again handled on the accesso side, but essentially we need to turn on the configuration that enables enhanced e-commerce. So again, we're sending the right information back to Google Analytics. And then finally, Google Analytics setup. So usually this is managed on the client side, although accesso Passport has supported that in some cases. So there's a configuration within your Google Analytics view. You have to turn on the enhanced e-commerce setting and then create that checkout funnel. Now, this is a very high-level overview. There is more detailed information about how to handle all of these steps, and that information is actually available if you want to contact your client services representative. They'll have this information to be able to supply it to you. All right. So at this time, I think I will go ahead and move on to Q&A. Katie, do we have any questions that have been submitted?
Thank you, Leslie. We do have a couple of questions. Let's start with this one. Is there any additional cost associated with upgrading from the standard e-commerce?
No, so Google Analytics has made enhanced e-commerce a free tool as well as their standard e-commerce, so there's no cost on the Google Analytics side. And then, like I mentioned in the setup steps, really that's just configuration on the part of accesso to get you up and running, so there's no development involved.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question is, if I turn on enhanced e-commerce, will I have access to historical data?
Unfortunately, the answer there is no, because you need to be sending the right information back to Google Analytics to store. You'll only start capturing that information about your product lists and your shopping funnels once you get it turned on. So I just suggest getting it turned on ASAP if it's something you're interested in.
Great, and our last question is, where can I learn more about enhanced e-commerce?
Google Analytics does a really great job of documenting information about their services and their platforms. So if you just search Google Analytics Academy, there's a handful of videos related to analytics. They have a standard e-commerce, and they even have an enhanced e-commerce video series. And that video series is very informative.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Leslie, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Enhance Your E-commerce with Google Analytics. If you have any other questions or would like to learn more about our accesso Passport solution, please contact sales@accesso.com. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 hours with a link to view the webinar recording for your reference. On behalf of accesso and Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day.